Greetings, fellow lords and ladies. While I look at Game of Thrones Season 3 now continues on with the episode Second Sons. So, beginning in the Riverlands, Arya Stark, now captive of Sandor Clegane after he kidnapped her from the Brotherhood Without Banners, picks up a rock and stands over him planning to strike. She thinks he is sound asleep. He opens his eyes and tells her she has one chance to hit him and kill him, but if she fails, he will break her hands. Later, she sits on the horse with him, sullen and refusing food he offers her. Sandor points out that for all she hates him, Arya could have been taken captive by someone far worse. He tells her about Sons and how he rescued her from a group of would-be rapists. Arya disbelieves this, but Sandor says, "Ask your sister if you ever see her again." They arrive at a river which Arya initially thinks to be the Blackwater. Rather confused with their lack of understanding, he points out that the river is the Red Fork of the Trident. Arya believed he was taking her back to King's Landing, but he reveals that he is in fact taking her to the Twins, where her mother and brother will surely be attending her uncle's wedding, and he will ransom her to them. He tells her ruefully that if she wasn't so busy trying to kill him, they might make it in time for the wedding. Arya has a small intense smile as Hound spurs the horse to a gallop. Anyway, then in Yunkai, Daenerys, Jorah, and Barristan hide behind a ruined building to spy on the encampment of the Second Sons, a professional mercenary company the powerful friends the Yunkish have employed. Barristan explains that although there are only 2,000 of them, the Second Sons are armored and mounted, enough to cause trouble for the Unsullied. Daenerys tells Barristan to organize a meeting with the Second Sons' captains, saying that men who fight for gold can't afford to lose a girl. Shortly thereafter, Daenerys hosts the captains Meero, a Braavasi also known as the Titan's Bastard, and Prendal Nagzan, a Giscari. Also in attendance is Prendal's capable and striking lieutenant Daario Naharis. The uncouth and sexually vulgar Meero makes himself at home, states that Daenerys reminds him of a whore he knows and lists, and feels up Missandei, while the surprisingly gracious queen shrugs his insults off. Prendal and Meero refuse Daenerys' offer of an alliance with her larger army, pointing out that they will not give their rewards until she reclaims the Iron Throne, which is still a distant prospect. With aplomb, she replies that a fortnight previous she had no army, and a year before that she had no dragons. Smiling gently, she gives them 2 days to make a decision and sends them off with a barrel of wine Meero had demanded. Daario smiles over his back at her as they depart. Once the Stillswords are gone, Daenerys drops her pretense of cordiality and, while glowering on Meero's back, instructs Barristan that if they must fight the Second Sons, he has to kill Meero first. Someone replies that he will be glad to do so. At the mercenary camp, Meero fondles the Yunkish pleasure slave while discussing the situation with Prendal and Daario. Prendal admits that the Second Sons cannot defeat Daenerys as Unsullied, and so Meero suggests that they assassinate her. Meero gives the slave 3 coins, one from each Volantis, Meereen, and Braavos, and tells her to randomly give them to the 3 mercenaries. The one who gets the Braavasi coin will kill the queen. That night, as Daenerys bathes, she is surprised that Missandei speaks no fewer than 19 languages. When Missandei says that this shouldn't be that odd, it only took Daenerys a year to gain a reasonable grasp of Dothraki. The Khaleesi bristles at the idea that she speaks only reasonable Dothraki, and switches to the language to teach Missandei a lesson, only to have her pronunciation corrected. Suddenly, an Unsullied enters and holds the knife to Missandei's throat, advising the women not to scream. He removes his helmet, revealing himself as Daario. He explains that he is here to kill Daenerys on orders from his captains, but they ran into a philosophical disagreement over her beauty. He then produces their severed heads. Intrigued, Daenerys rises from her bath and asks if Daario will swear fealty to her. He bends the knee and swears his sword, his men, and his heart to Daenerys. Anyway, on Dragonstone, Melisandre finally arrives back at Dragonstone with Gendry in tow. Stannis is less than impressed by the sight of the bastard boy who is technically his nephew and has been amused when Melisandre orders him fed, bathed, and clothed. He believes it is pointless as they tend to sacrifice him, but Melisandre reveals it is merely a sham to keep Gendry from feeling secure, in much the same way as a sacrificial lamb from seeing the blade of the knife. In much the same way as keeping a sacrificial lamb from seeing the blade of the knife. Meanwhile, Davos Seaworth, still languishing in his cell, is paid a visit by Stannis. Davos is told of the impending sacrifice of Gendry. Davos protests this, saying that unlike Renly, who was a rebel against his rightful king, Gendry is an innocent who has never done him any wrong. Stannis argues that the sacrifice of one bastard boy will usher in his victory, which Stannis believes is the only way to save every man, woman, and child in Westeros from the coming darkness that will devour everything in its path. Yasso Davos can doubt the power of Melisandre's god, when Stannis has seen visions of a great battle in the snow, and Davos saw the creature she gave birth to. Davos speculates that the real reason Stannis came is because deep down, a part of him knows what he's about to do is wrong, and he knew Davos would tell him the truth he needs to hear, regardless of how it would be taken. After extracting a promise from Davos that he won't act against Melisandre again, Stannis has him released. In Gendry's quarters, Melisandre seduces Gendry long enough to distract him, then probably ties him to the bed and places leeches on his body. She explains that Stannis and Davos enter the room that Davos wanted a demonstration of the power in King's blood, then removes the leeches and lights a fire in a nearby brazier. As part of the magical ritual that follows, Stannis throws the leeches into the flames in Melisandre's direction, and recites the name of the three people he wants dead as they burn: the usurper Robb Stark, the usurper Balon Greyjoy, the usurper Joffrey Baratheon. Anyway, at King's Landing, Tyrion speaks with Sansa before their wedding at the Great Sept of Baelor, though he knows the girl is not thrilled at the prospect of marrying him. Tyrion promises Sansa that he will not mistreat her, and Sansa agrees there are worse Lannisters she could be wed to. Prior to the wedding, Margaery Tyrell tries to ingratiate herself to Cersei, commenting that they will technically be sisters soon. Cersei responds by telling Margaery the story behind the reigns of Castamere, relating how it refers to the destruction of House Reign of Castamere after the failed rebellion against House Lannister, implying similarities between the ambitions and positions of Houses Rhaena and Tyrell, and that the same fate may fall upon House Tyrell if they plot against the Lannisters. It concludes by threatening to have Margaery strangled in her sleep if she ever dares call Cersei sister again. The ceremony is a grim affair. Joffrey smugly escorts Sansa to the altar in place of her father and impotently removes the stool upon which Tyrion was to stand to cloak Sansa Lannister colors as part of the ceremony, eliciting snickers from the congregation, though the scowled Lord Tywin quickly silences them. Tyrion, in the face of humiliation, asks Sansa to kneel, and he places the cloak around her shoulders. The new High Septon begins the ceremony. Later as man and wife, they have a reception dinner, which also proves a grim and miserable affair. Tyrion spends the wedding feast mostly by getting deeply drunk and making light of his father's insistence that his inebriated state will render him unfit to impregnate his wife. Tyrion, drunkenly proclaiming himself the god of tits and wine, reminds his father that Tywin has long called him a drunken little lust-filled beast. So doing, his duty in the marriage bed will not pose a problem. At the same time, Joffrey is himself drinking too much wine. Losing what few inhibitions he has, his behavior becomes increasingly offensive to both Sansa and Tyrion. Against Cersei's ineffectual protests, Joffrey gets up and, flanked by his Kingsguard, taunts Sansa that she still found a way to marry a Lannister. Joffrey then reflects that it doesn't matter which Lannister gets her pregnant. Nobody says he might want to rape her after Tyrion is done with her, while the Kingsguard hold her down. Joffrey then declares it is time for the bedding ceremony, which involves the men at the wedding stripping the bride and the women stripping the groom before carrying them off to the marriage bed. But Tyrion angrily insists that there will be no bedding ceremony. When Joffrey keeps pushing the matter, a furious Tyrion slams his dagger into the table and threatens that Joffrey will be fucking his own bride with a wooden cock if he doesn't let it drop. As the court stands in shocked silence, Joffrey sees with outrage, and Tyrion defiantly glares at his nephew with pure hatred. After a tense moment, Tywin defeats the situation by agreeing that there will be no bedding ceremony, and placates Joffrey by claiming Tyrion's outburst is merely a result of his being extremely drunk. Taking the hint and using it as an excuse to avoid punishment, Tyrion visibly swallows his anger and begins to act far more drunk than he actually is, intentionally humiliating himself, and says he only made a bad joke. It isn't clear if anyone in the room, including Tywin and Joffrey, thinks that Tyrion's outburst was simply due to inebriation, but everyone plays along anyway to help the tension pass. Tyrion, while pretending to be so drunk he can barely stand, escorts Sansa to their bedchamber. Once they are alone in their quarters, a tense moment passes. Sansa nervously and slowly undresses. Tyrion ultimately tells her to stop, deciding he will not consummate the marriage if she does not want to, and only will if she changes her mind. When Sansa questions what he will do if she never does, Tyrion sarcastically jokes, "And so my watch begins," implying that his marriage will be celebrated for all time like a brother of the Night's Watch, and then abruptly passes out on a nearby couch. The following morning, Shae notices with a hint of a smile that Sansa's bedsheets are not stained with blood, and Tyrion's virgin bride is still a virgin. Anyway, finally, beyond the wall. Samwell Tarly and Gilly continue on their journey to Castle Black, taking refuge in a destroyed cabin next to a heart tree. Before they enter, two crows land on a branch of the heart tree and begin to squawk loudly. Later at night, Sam tries to light a fire, but is frustrated in his attempts. Gilly tries and does it easily. Meanwhile, Sam suggests that Gilly name her son, but she does not know any boy names. Sam gives her some examples, and also explains the difference between first and last names. Gilly likes the name Randall, Sam's father's first name, but Sam asks her not to give the child that name. Sam shares the truth about his father and his upbringing marked by cruelty, which they both have in common. Suddenly, they are interrupted by a thunderous squawking of the crows. Sam and Gilly go outside to investigate, and discover hundreds of crows filling the nearby tree and on the structure itself, screeching violently. Gilly is then horrified to see a White Walker approaching them, and knows that it is after her child. As the Walker emerges from the trees, it is shown to be the same one that spared Sam before the battle at the Fist. Sam draws his sword and orders it to halt its advance, but the Walker simply grabs the sword blade with a resounding clang. There's a crunching of ice, and the sword itself shatters in his grip. The Walker swats the much larger and heavier Sam aside with a lone backhander that continues to bear down upon Gilly, who refuses to give up her baby. As the monster reaches out to seize the infant, Sam staggers back to his feet, pulls out his dragon-glass dagger, and runs at the Walker in desperation. With a mighty howl that mixes with Gilly's screams, Sam plunges the black glass into the Walker's left scapula, and the Walker lets out an unholy guttural screech of agony. Rolling to face Sam, its face blanches as it recognizes him and screeches again, this time in disbelief. It falls to its knees and shatters, leaving nothing but white dust and the dagger. The dagger is left behind as Sam and Gilly race away in a panic. The crows fly over the trees and chase them, screaming their hatred. So anyway, let's take a look at some notes surrounding this episode. The title of the episode refers to the Second Sons, a mercenary company in Essos, which is led by Merrow, nicknamed the Titan's Bastard. The Second Sons in the TV series have been condensed with the second mercenary company which Meereen hired, the Stormcrows. In the books, Merrow is the captain of the Second Sons, while Prindle Nag Zen is the captain of the Stormcrows, and Daario is Prindrel's lieutenant. On a looser level, the entire episode deals with Second Sons of various forms. Tyrion is the spurred younger son of Tywin, and is being forced into marriage to further his father's plans. Sandor is the second Clegane's son, but unlike his brother Gregor, he has turned his back on the Lannisters. Stannis was the second Baratheon son after Robert, and is struggling with how to claim the throne of his deceased brother. Gendry is functionally his second son, at least well-regarded son, due to his bastard status. Similar to Gendry, Samwell talks to Gilly about how his father was cruel to him. Even though Sam was actually his father's firstborn son, he considers Sam a disgrace and functionally the second son behind Sam's younger brother. The music playing over the end credits is a variation of several White Walker motifs, as well as the central White Walker theme. On the official soundtrack release, it was titled White Walkers. There was a two-week break between Second Sons and the Reigns of Castamere due to the Memorial Day holiday on May 26 in the United States. Since HBO is a premium channel, they usually don't bother skipping holiday weeks as the network and cable broadcasters do. However, Blackwater aired over Memorial Day in 2012 and took a slight dip in ratings, so HBO opted to just take the week off for Season 3. The doll that sits next to Sansa's mirror in her first scene of the episode is the same one that her father, Eddard Stark, gave to her as a gift back in Episode 3 of Season 1, Lord Snow. At the time, she said she was too old to play with dolls. Eddard said it was made by the same toy maker who produces dolls for Princess Marcella Baratheon. Sansa apparently covered Tyrion with a blanket sometime after he passed out on the couch, unless he got up in the middle of the night, but Strang implied that we are later shown when he first wakes up. Sansa stated that she was 13 years old when Cersei asked her in the first episode of Season 1. 2 seasons later, She said this episode that she is 14, not 15. Other statements have played a general rule that Season 1 equals 1 year within the storyline, so it might be played that almost 2 years have passed, and Sansa herself just hasn't reached her 15th name day yet. This is the first time that Sam's father has been explicitly referred to in dialogue as Randall Tarley. Sam just referred to him as my father in Seasons 1 and 2. Lord Randall's name was first mentioned in dialogue by Davos Seaworth in the Season 2 premiere, though he didn't mention that he has a son named Samwell. The significance of Dragonglass is finally revealed, the substance that is lethal to White Walkers. The catch of Dragonglass daggers was discovered at the Fist of the First Men in Episode 8 of Season 2 of The Prince of Winterfell, exactly 1 season ago, but none of those who found it had any guess to its purpose. TV viewers might think it foolish that Sam left the Dragonglass dagger on the ground where the White Walker died, instead of recovering such a valuable weapon. In the books, Sam will only have one Dragonglass dagger. Later, Mormont gave him another dagger as he was dying, which shattered when Sam used it against a White, and he told Gren to pick it up after killing the White Walker. However, the next time that Samwell appears in the TV series, 2 episodes from now in Mysha, he reveals that he simply had multiple daggers in the TV version, and thus apparently didn't think it was worth the risk of wasting time trying to find his first one, fearing that more White Walkers or Whites would soon arrive. The White Walker appearing in this episode is visually identical to the one Sam encountered at the Battle of the Fist of the First Men. However, Gilly says that he is here to take her son, suggesting he is the same one that Jon Snow encountered at Craster's Keep. The White Walker was played by Ross Mullen, who also played the White Walker in Valar Morghulis, so it can be assumed this is meant to be the same character. Craster's White Walker was played by Ian White. This episode was nominated for the 2013 Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Hairstyling for a Single Camera Series. Tyrion refers to himself as the god of tits and wine. Tyrion referring to himself as the god of tits and wine is a reference to a joke he makes in the Season 2 episode The Prince of Winterfell, in which he asks Varys, "The Lord of Light wants his enemies burned. The drowned god wants them drowned. Why are all the gods such vicious cunts? Where is the god of tits and wine?" Melisandre claims generally that there is power in king's blood, but does not specify what it is. In the novel, she claims it is the power to wake stone dragons. It's unclear what are those stone dragons. Also, it's dragon eggs or the stone carvings of drag as a dragon stone. Actual live leeches were used when Melisandre performs her blood ritual with Gendry. Live leeches were used because they appear in close-up, both when she holds them and when they curl around an actor Joe Dempsey's chest. The leeches which have already been into Gendry are attached to him, however, are not live leeches but prosthetics. They also have the real leeches before they bit into him. Why did Tywin say that the bedding could be dispensed with? It is out of character for him to agree with Tyrion on anything. Perhaps because he thought the bedding sale was not dignified enough for the Lannisters, or brought back unpleasant memories of his late wife's bedding. According to Barrister Selmy, Aerys acted indecently on that occasion, verbally and physically. Or it simply applied to be the easiest way to defuse the situation, given Tyrion's clear hostility towards the idea. One of the names Sam suggests for Gilly's baby is Gaimon. This is perhaps a homage for the producer Gaimon Cassidy. The Hound tells Arya that his brother once killed a man for snoring. This is perhaps a reference to the Old West outlaw John Wesley Hardin, who allegedly shot someone to death for snoring. Ooh. So overall, I think this is a pretty enjoyable episode, despite everything that happens at Tyrion and Sansa's wedding, but still it is pretty enjoyable nonetheless, so yeah. So overall, I gave the episode Second Sons 4 Iron Thrones out of 5. Well, and tune in tomorrow as we take a look at the Reigns of Castamere. So, until then, remember everyone, winter is coming.